Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Major Applications Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Eddie Labour, the Committee Chairman. If I can do apologies for absence first, please.
No apologies for absence.
Good. Are there any declarations of interest in the three items that are before us tonight? Good. The reports that are being considered are all in part one, i.e. the public part of the meeting, and they are items 5, 6 and 7 as was published in the committee agenda, so that hasn't changed. Okay, in terms of tonight's meeting, we have one petition item 36 to 40 Rickmansworth Road. In respect of petitions, this is a meeting of the committee held in public, not a public meeting, so the rights are as set out in the Council's Constitution, as I will summarise now and as in the committee papers. Petitioners get 5 minutes to address us, 4 minutes on green, 1 minute amber, and when we get to red, I will stop. On any item where there's a petition, the applicant or their agent has a right to address us, as do ward councillors on any item. There are no ward councillors that I am informed of planning to speak tonight. The proceedings of this committee are on the Council's YouTube site and are therefore broadcast. The cameras are facing in this direction, but will pick up anybody who's actually speaking. The only other thing I would say, or two other things I would say, a couple of bits of housekeeping. Emergency exits are one behind me and one over there. We're not expecting fire alarms, so if they go off, we will be leaving. Can I ask, please, all mobile phones are now switched off or at least to silent, and that does include those around me, because those are the ones that normally go off in this process. Now, on all items, the officers will introduce them. There will be some items up on the screen, and that supplements the report members have already seen and read. So the officer presentation is summarising the key points of it. Voting members of committee tonight are, I'll start on my far right, Councillor Brian Stead, Councillor John Morgan, Councillor Henry Higgins, Councillor David Yarrow, Councillor Ian Edwards. On my left, Councillor John Oswald, Councillor Peter Curling, Councillor Janet Duncan. If all of those people manage to get a tie on any item, I get a vote. But I'm sure they'll manage to sort out an answer. Highways tonight is Man Mahan Ranger. Neil McLennan from Major Applications is presenting. James Rogers, the Head of Planning Officer's Advice. Anise Tedji from Democratic Services is my clerk. And Joyce Mehta is doing legals tonight. Without any further debate, let's move to item 5, please, 36 to 40 Rickmansworth Road. I would comment that this has been considered by committee on 2 previous occasions, on the 14th of March, on the 4th of October last year, and has been subject of a committee site visit. Neil, can you take it away?
Thank you, Chair. This application was deferred at the request of members on the 4th of October 2016, and to allow the applicant the opportunity to submit the following information: revised junction design for the entrance to the site, and a highway safety audit of the revised scheme. And in the interest of expediency, the Council's own highways engineers reviewed the existing design, traffic and speed data provided by the applicant's highway consultant and produced alternative designs that secure the following improvements. And I'll go straight to the revised highways plan. The access has been improved to provide two-way vehicle movements and shaped so that vehicles emerging from the site are guided to turn left only. Right turn movements out of the site will be banned. Statutory left turn signs and road markings comprising a left turn arrow will be placed on the carriageway just before the exit. Refuse vehicles can now enter and exit the site in a forward gear. Auto tracks have been received to demonstrate that. And the visibility requirements for vehicles coming out of the site are met. A pedestrian crossing facility is proposed to the east of the site, comprising a central island, drop curbs and footpaths to the crossing. That is there. A dedicated right turn into the site is being provided. The carriageway approaches to the site in both directions are to have coloured anti-skid surfacing. The hatch central reservation will have a surface in a different colour. And a central island which keeps left with a keep left bollard is also proposed to the west of the site. Access western site access, guiding traffic along the eastbound carriageway away from the traffic waiting turn right into the site. And all these proposals have been safety audited. And these measures are considered to resolve the concerns raised by members at the Planning Committee on the 4th of October 2017, and the application is therefore recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. This is the petition item. Ms. Susan Winter. If you press the red button on the middle when you're ready to begin, it will light up. Yep, go on. Thank you.
We are of the strong opinion that this proposed development will cause road safety risks. This location has historically been the site of many accidents with drivers losing control. This is why the significant hatching marks, both central and curbside, were introduced on this S-bend. The fact that the safety audit suggests adding a right-hand turn lane into the site, plus restricting vehicles leaving the site to turn left only, is an acknowledgement that this road is dangerous. We do not feel sufficient account has been taken of the 5 properties of Ivy Walk and 3 flats of Sandhill, all of which are directly opposite the proposed site. Their needs for exit will be greatly impacted. We cannot see how this London Distributor Road, being one of the main routes through the north of the borough, can facilitate 3 lanes at this point. The Stage 1 road safety audit is entirely based on the premise that the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit is being adhered to. It states vehicle speeds accord with the speed limit. It relies on the survey that was carried out in March 2014 on 2 consecutive days for a period of 1 hour 25 minutes at quiet periods of the day. The figures show on the Tuesday only 48 cars were within the speed limit, but 181 were not. On Wednesday, 55 cars were within the speed limit, but 144 were not. Why was the further speed survey carried out over a 7-day period in May 2016 not given to Gateway, who carried out the road safety audit? In this report, it shows vehicles going eastbound totaled 62,072, and only 11,924 were recorded at going under 31 miles per hour, whereas 50,148 were speeding. As there is going to be a left-hand turn-only restriction from these flats, where are these cars going to turn if they wish to go westbound? They will probably do a U-turn on the Rickmansworth Road, swinging round in Highfield Road Crescent. Very dangerous. Dermot McCaffrey states this proposed development will only generate an extra 20 net trips per day, and supports this with TRIX data from Hornsey, Islington, Stratford, Barnes, Aldgate and Bethnal Green. This is not comparable. Neither is a car ownership within 5 miles used of 0.5 cars or less. In the appeal decision of 27th of February 2008 relating to just 6 two-bedroom room apartments, the inspector said, "For the reasons given, I conclude that use of the access in connection with the proposed development would lead to conditions which would be prejudicial to highway safety, and accordingly I dismiss this appeal." If the inspector felt highway safety would be compromised by development of 6 two-bedroom apartments, then we cannot foresee an enlarged development of 24 flats being any safer, even with the proposed road changes. Greenhays Close is a small cul-de-sac of 23 red brick houses, all of similar Georgian appearance. We believe the scale and bulk of this application still appears over-dominant, incongruous and visually intrusive to our close, and that its proposed yellow brick will appear more obtrusive than if in red brick. At present, I can only view 3 windows and the landing window of number 38. I am extremely troubled that this will be replaced by what appears to be a combination of 29 windows, French doors, small balconies. I find this totally unacceptable and an intrusion of the privacy at present enjoyed. As the 27 car parking spaces for this proposed development will be at the rear of the property, some consideration must be given to the greatly increased noise and disturbance level, particularly for numbers 11 and 12. We are also concerned about the outside lighting for this development and how it will impact on Greenhays Close, particularly numbers 11 and 12, where a bedroom is facing the development. Greenhays Residence Group Limited owns a ransom strip of land which runs from the boundary of number 11 Greenhays Close and under the secondary gates of 38 Rickmansworth Road. We will not give permission for any access to, from Greenhays Close whatsoever, whether vehicle, pedestrian or cycle, for this proposed new development. Should Hillingdon pass this application, we would respectfully emphasise that we would require number 38 secondary access to be totally blocked off prior to any demolition or delivery of site machinery and vehicles, and that it be replaced by a hoarding of some considerable height to offset the massive mess and noise intrusion. In the long term, a high wall along that boundary would help to soundproof the general infringement created by this development.
Thank you. Do members have any questions? No, thank you very much.
Okay.
Anybody here on behalf of the applicant or the agent?
Chairman, members, good evening. I'm Richard Henley, a Chartered Town Planner and the agent advising Howarth Homes on this site. Thank you for the opportunity to address you tonight and respond to the objectors in this highly unusual situation, having taken the call 3 days after the previous Planning Committee meeting to be told that there was in fact a petition that had been mislaid in the Planning Administration team and the application would have to come back to committee this evening. The impact of this appalling administrative error is far-reaching beyond the pure planning matters in this room and committee, with my client Howarth Homes having acted in good faith based upon that decision to grant planning permission in relation to acquiring the site, which could have serious consequences depending on the outcome this evening. It was only 2 weeks ago that I sat in this room and listened to the planning and highway officers make a full presentation on the scheme, on how the applicant had fully responded to the highway matters members had deferred the application on last October. They have carried out a considerable further work on the junction and a safety audit as required by members of this committee and reviewed and supported by the council's senior highway officer. The application and findings of the detailed highway assessment work was fully debated at length in this room and a cross-party unanimous decision reached by this committee. The scheme was considered to be acceptable and would successfully achieve a safe highways arrangement for this proposed development. There is nothing that I've heard this evening that should change that decision of this committee, and no new issues have arisen that either weren't raised back in October last year, in this latest emerged petition, or in the ejection letters received. The facts are clear. Firstly, the latest highway junction arrangements have been assessed, tested, refined, visibility displays complying with manual for streets, and a Stage 1 safety audit passed. The proposed right-hand junction and on-site refuse turning arrangements are now supported by the council's highway officer, which has never been the case with any previous redevelopment schemes on this site. The level of detail, assessment and highway measures now proposed were never put forward at any time in any of the previous applications or appeal schemes. I therefore urge members to recall the previous debate which took place only 2 weeks ago and the unanimous support that you gave to this scheme at that time and uphold that decision here again this evening. Should you have any questions relating to the highway proposals, I am joined this evening by Kevin Lang of Langmore Consulting, who is a fully qualified highway engineer with over 30 years' experience and designed the revised highway arrangements with the council's highway consultant to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Any questions from members? Councillor Duncan.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for people who spoke and for you coming along to explain matters. This is the first time we've heard the petitioner speak on this matter, and the resident raised the issue of a boundary wall or some treatment while you were working on the site. Do you know if the developer would be prepared to do that?
Just taking the first point, actually the petitioners did speak back in last October when originally, so that's a point of clarification. But in terms of the rear access to the site, yeah, I mean, the site plan, which I'm sure you may have seen this evening, doesn't allow for any accesses to the rear of the site. Everything is coming off the front of the site, and it's only landscape gardens at the rear.
No. Doesn't appear to be any other questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, I will now open this one up. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just a point on the addendum sheet. It mentions the 31st of April. 31st of April doesn't exist.
Very true. Very well spotted. Yes, First, we'll call it the 30th, I think, would be a more sensible date. But yes, well spotted, thank you. I was too busy reading the other things on the agenda to spot that one. Well done. Any other points, Councillor Duncan?
The resident who spoke about there being an increase of 20 vehicles a day in the study that was submitted. Is that the basis on which it was assessed by our highways engineers, please?
Sorry, can you repeat the number?
The resident who spoke, the petitioner who spoke, said that in the documentation submitted, it referred to an increase of 20 vehicles a day. Have all the studies that have been done, the examination of it, been based on that? Because
these are two separate issues. The numbers of vehicles really is to assess the trip generation from the site and what impact is on traffic congestion. The other issue relates to speeds, and the speed surveys were carried out, and this safety audit, clearly states that the supporting speed surface confirm the vehicle speeds accord with the speed limit, 30 miles per hour along Rickmansworth Road.
If I could just come back on that. There are going to be more units here. There are 24 units. I wasn't quite sure whether, when it was 20 vehicles a day, it was just expected that that's going to be the car ownership and usage rate. But I do think that the number of vehicles accessing and leaving this site, I understand that there are two issues, I appreciate that, but that is going to have some impact. I just wanted to know whether the two had been married up.
Yes, they have. The transport assessment considered those figures.
Was it 20 or 24 or whatever? And surely there'd be more vehicle movements because people have got to come out of the site as well as go back in, and if people were dropping off children and then going shopping or whatever, there'd be more vehicle movements. You could have something like, well, I don't know, 100 vehicle movements a day or something, possibly.
If you bear with me for a second, I'll just try and find out the figures from the highways comments.
Any other questions? Councillor Higgins.
Yeah, to be honest, I find this really very difficult considering that this has already been determined and here we are, and I do apologise to residents for that. I still have questions of it. Unfortunately, I wasn't here for that meeting, but 31 hours down that road I find very hard to believe considering I use it on a regular basis, and if someone is travelling at 30 miles an hour down that road, they're usually being flashed or hooted on. But my main concern is actually is this U-turning business, which could create more accidents, to be honest, than actually stopping. And how are we going to police this is the other question for me. And is there anything we can actually do by the U-turning and further down the road? So.
This issue was raised at the last committee as well.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yes, and I gave you an example of other sites where...
I wasn't here, sorry.
Yeah. I have an example of a site on West End Road between Station Approach and RAF's White House Gate, the two set of signals. There's a development there where we had to ban right-hand movements. Yeah. And there aren't any dedicated facilities for U-turn, not for a small development like this. So you will have to go to whichever next junction and take a U-turn.
Yeah, but that's the issue that I'm raising. It's not.
Please, Councillor.
I beg your pardon. That's the point I'm raising. Actually, is that to do a U-turn on that road at any time is dangerous. But if they're having to drive further up the road and then causing more of a problem by cars waiting to U-turn, and I do what Councillor Duncan is trying to say as well, is that most movements will be early or late in the evening when it's its busiest time. So this just really does concern me.
There shouldn't be any U-turn movements. They'll have the safe movements at that time when there is heavy traffic is to turn left or right into the next available junction and come back out again. I'm
going to pull this in a little bit now. As members were reminded, and I can only apologise for the fact the petition wasn't fully considered, but members have made a determination on this matter. The test has got a little higher tonight, i.e. we would need considerable new evidence that was not considered last time round. Now, we considered traffic, we considered terms, all of those matters were considered when members made their original decision, as was all the highway information. Now, unless I haven't heard anything new tonight, unless anyone's going to give me anything new, I think we'll have to move this.
Chairman, if I may, I share probably everybody's discomfort in the way that we are now hearing the petition, having already made a decision, and for that I do apologise. At the last committee meeting, all of the issues that were raised by the petitioner were mentioned, and I have heard nothing new or additional such that I believe I have the grounds to overturn a decision I reached at the last meeting. And therefore, I would propose to go with the Oxford's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Osborne.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. And I'll thank the petitioner for the petition, and again apologise that somehow we missed this. But like Councillor Edwards, I don't think I've heard anything tonight that's anything new that we didn't hear at the last meeting. And no disrespect to anybody, but as far as the U-turns are concerned, I don't think it's got anything to do with this application, quite honestly. A U-turn is what it is. It's a U-turn. It can be done anywhere. They're dangerous, but it happens. So I don't think it's got anything to do with this application. And having said that, I'll second Councillor Edwards' proposal.
Councillor Duncan.
Just a couple of points. I would appreciate it if Mr. Ranger could answer my original question. He was going to look that up. Also, if this does go through, could we have something regarding the boundary treatment in the nature of a high wall or something to protect the amenity of...
I think landscaping is in there anyway. I don't think we're in a position to start adding additional bits we didn't consider last time, though. I think that would
there is a comprehensive
landscaping condition in there, so I think we live with that.
The intention would be that there be a boundary treatment along the whole northern boundary, and I think that then addresses in itself the issue being raised.
So in condition 7, it covers all that through means of enclosure, boundary treatment. Thank you.
Have you got anything on numbers? Or I don't think it's immensely relevant at this point.
There's nothing on numbers in the highways engineer's comments in this.
Okay, we haven't got them, so we haven't got them. But I don't think there's enough, again, in there that would give us grounds to not determine this at the moment.
If I can just come in, there is a very comprehensive scheme which is on the slide there, and I think that's the important factor. So when members deferred in October, and at that point, obviously, they did have some concerns. I think it's this slide itself and the comprehensive scheme that was outlined by Mr. McClellan. That's the key issue, and that's why it is a recommendation of approval.
Okay. We have a proposal on the table. It's duly seconded. This be approved as per officer recommendations. All those in favour, please clearly show. 1, 2, 3. What have I got? 5, 6. Those against? No. 2 abstentions. Okay, fair enough. That one's approved. Agenda item 6, please. Silverdale Industrial Estate, Silverdale Road, Hayes. This is a new scheme. This was subject to a member's site visit last Friday, so members are familiar with this site. Neil, when you're ready, please.
Thank you, Chair. You members will note there's quite a large addendum on this one that does clarify certain inaccuracies in the report. Apologies for that. I'll run through it now. This application relates to an industrial site that forms part of the Crawford and Silverdale Industrial Estate. It's occupied by a series of industrial and office buildings. The site also includes a disused Shackles dock, which occupies the eastern part of the site. You can see it's an L-shaped site, so this is the wider industrial. Well, this is the wider industrial area. You can see it's a designated IBA. This is the Silverdale and Crawford Industrial Estate, and our site is this L-shaped one. You can see it's has a frontage onto the canal. That's another site plan. I've got some. That's the aerial photo, so you can see there's some residential on this side and on this side, but the rest of it is industrial land. This is the recent scheme, High Point Village, on the opposite side of the canal. There's some photos. This is northern part of the site, viewed from Silverdale Road. That's the listed Benlow Works, and this is the building that forms part of our site. That's a view along Silverdale Road. That's a canal, the raised canal embankment along the side there, with High Point Village in the background. This is part of the council's estate on the other side of Silverdale, and this is that building forms part of one of the buildings that forms part of our site. This is the locally listed building adjacent to our site, so it falls outside our site. And that's Skeffington Court, which forms part of our industrial estate, our council estate. This is the part of the canal side that runs past the development. So that fence is the boundary with the site. You see there's a higher level path that members saw on site, and the actual towpath runs down here. See, it's quite overgrown. And this is a view of Shackles Dock. So these buildings are part of our site and are coming down as part of the proposal. And there's another view looking up out of the site. So that's Silverdale Road up there, and there's a part of Shackles Dock there. And this is the proposed site layout. You can see the buildings in 4 blocks. This is Block A, Block B, so that's a 9-storey. There'll be a 9-storey building along the canal frontage. It's a lower ground with 8 stories above. This is the canal side. This is the extended Shackles Dock, refurbishing an extended Shackles Dock, and this is Block C and Block B, which is a lower height than the main scheme. That's the lower ground level, so you can see the basement car parking under Blocks A and B, and there is some also additional parking, so visitor spaces along here, and 4 additional residential disabled bays here. This is some elevations of the site. I've got some visualisations which probably help members better understand how the scheme is intended to look. So this is the view across the canal. So we're standing on the side where High Point Village is. So you can see the entrance to Shackles Dock there. This is the raised and re-landscaped canal side embankment, and the two larger blocks fronting the site, fronting the canal, and 2 lower buildings there. And this is a view intended to show a visualisation of the works to Shackles Dock. So there's a lower rise building. So this is looking up towards the Silverdale Road entrance. This is another view looking down from the canal into Shackles Dock. And there's a view of the frontage building on Silverdale Road with the raised undercroft pedestrian access into the site. The site is not located in a conservation area and does not comprise any statutory listed buildings. However, Benlow Works, a 4-storey Grade 2 listed building, is located on the north-east side of the site. A locally listed warehouse, formerly a chair factory, which I showed you earlier, is located along the application's western boundary. And Shackles Dock is considered to be a non-designated heritage asset. Planning permission is sought for the demolition of the existing buildings and the construction of 4 blocks ranging in height from 4 to 9 stories and providing 122 new residential units and 230 square metres of flexible commercial floor space. 62 residential parking spaces are proposed, including 13 disabled and 6 visitor spaces, making a total of 68 parking spaces. Of the 122 units proposed, 27 are affordable, 20 are socially rented, 7 of those are 1-bed, 6 2-bed and 7 3-bed. And they're all located in Block A, which is one of the larger blocks fronting the hotel, fronting the canal here. And in addition, there are 7 intermediate units proposed in Block D, which is a block near the front. In fact, it's that one there. In addition, the proposal will refurbish and extend Shackles Dock in the eastern part of the site and deliver significant improvements to the canal side, as well as new publicly accessible open space and extensive landscaping. Accommodation is to be provided for the Sharks Canoe Club, which is to be secured by a legal agreement. In terms of principle of development, there is both local plan and London plan support for the release of surplus industrial land to provide more housing where appropriate. Evidence demonstrates that Hillingdon Borough has a surplus of employment land at present, and the proposal will contribute towards the council's housing supply as prescribed in the London plan and emerging local policy. The proposed scheme would be within the London plan density guidelines, providing good internal and external living space. The proposed layout would not have an adverse impact on living conditions or on surrounding occupiers in terms of overdominance, loss of privacy or loss of daylight sunlight. It is considered that the scale and layout of the proposed development would be compatible with a sustainable residential quality, having regard to specific heritage constraints of the site. There are no adverse impacts on ecology or archaeology. Contamination, air quality, noise impacts are considered to be acceptable. Highway, flood and drainage issues can be addressed by suitable conditions, and a viable level of affordable housing provision has been agreed. The application is therefore recommended for approval subject to conditions and a Section 106 agreement set out in the report and as amended in the circulated addendum. I would point out that in the amended heads of terms in the addendum, the final heads of term 11, which refers to improvements to the Canals and Rivers Trust. The actual heads of term should end where they land at the first sentence, and reference about other works that the applicant will be entering into in exchange for use of the Canals and Rivers Trust land, totaling £500,000. That actually isn't a heads of term. That's just a note to say that in addition to that, there's significant works already been agreed between the applicant and the Canals and Rivers Trust. So therefore, our recommendation is to approve. Thank you.
Sorry, if I can just add one additional point to Neil's presentation. There has been correspondence from an adjoining landowner, and one of the issues cited is possible access rights across bits of the application site. I've kind of personally spoken to the adjoining landowner and said that they really need to provide clarification on this matter. I did 5 days ago receive some land registry documents. There wasn't any effective commentary attached to that, and the documents were actually, all 4 documents were dated 9th of June 2015, so they're actually very old land registry docs. In conjunction with the council's legal advisor, we don't think that there are any property issues that members need to be mindful. That said, we do think an informative I6 should be added to the any grant of planning permission. And I'll just quickly read that out and request that members give me delegated authority to add this informative. It's actually on page 129. It was added to another report. But the informative is: your attention is drawn to the fact that planning permission does not override property rights and any ancient rights of light that may exist. This permission does not empower you to enter onto lands not in your ownership without the specific consent of the owner. If you require further information advice, you should consult a solicitor. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. The officer did draw members' attention to the addendum. I would do that again because that provides considerable clarification in terms of exactly what we're building here, and in particular what's in that S106. So that should help debate. I'll open up. Councillor Higgins.
Just 2 questions. First question, is this vision we have before us accurate, or is it
a CGI?
Is it CGI? Well, you know, we go through. I went through this before, that we have these lovely pictures of these lovely things, and actually nothing. They can't get circles or something on it, and then we get squares. So, how accurate? Yeah, I know. This time we're lucky, aren't we? But that's my first question. The second question is the report is really all over the place, which is a bit concerning, because I have no problem with this at all. But I really, you know,
I understand there was an issue with corrections being correctly applied to the report.
Whenever I see an addendum that has more than thing, I am concerned.
It's a matter we will take up offline.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, but thank you for raising it. Neil, can you just pick up that point about the do we believe that what we're being shown is what we're likely to get?
Well, I mean, obviously we have the standard condition that requires them to build it in accordance with the plans, and we're not approving the CGIs, but we have got detailed elevations
which match those CGIs.
Which do match those CGIs.
So any variation is therefore going to have to appear back before us.
Exactly. I don't think it's a false indication of what this scheme is capable of delivering.
Fine. I think that answers the members' concern. Councillor Duncan, Councillor Edwards, and then Councillor Oswald.
Thank you, Chair. One of the things I note in the revised Section 106 is the residents of this development not to be eligible for parking permits. I thought that there had already been some legal judgment about this and that we were on very dodgy ground to try and do this. Could you advise, please?
Yes, Councillor, I think this has been discussed previously extensively, but the position has now changed. There's been an appeal decision which allows the council to word conditions in a certain way so that this is restricted.
The other thing, on air quality, financial contribution is a sum of 80,000. That's very nice. To go towards highways and public rail improvements to encourage walking and cycling and reduce reliance on car travel. I mean, this seems the most circuitous sort of way to improve air quality. I mean, I'm not going to take up walking because I can't, and cycling I regard as too dangerous. And I'm sure there are many people like me, people don't live like this anymore. Couldn't it go towards something a bit more constructive to do with air quality, please?
I'll ask officers to comment in a moment. I'm not sure what we can do.
There is a formula for that the government actually provide for calculating harm arising from air quality and a way of mitigating it. There isn't a lot in a residential scheme you can do to mitigate the production of things that contribute towards air quality. One of the most easy ways to do that is to reduce reliance on cars. Obviously, not everyone will be able to, but it's to encourage the maximum number of people not to use their cars. So that's one way of trying to achieve it. Other ways could be landscaping, and that was intended as a suggested way of how you might easily reduce.
And of course, this does have a particularly low car parking ratio, and of course does have the connections to the canal, which will provide an easy way of walking to the town centre. I think
yes.
we saw from site visit. Okay, if I can move on, Councillor Redwood.
Thank you, Chairman. The site visit was very, very helpful, as was the explanation by officers there of the context in which this development sits. It does set a benchmark for what should be a very good redevelopment and regeneration of the Hayes, and that is welcome. It is of a high standard. My question relates to the continued public access through this site, and how is that protected so that we don't...
access from where to where?
From the north of the site. So particularly it will be the development or the present site within the two arms of the L. But also the houses immediately to the north of this site.
Are you thinking about access for people who don't actually live on this site to the canal? Is that where you are?
We're removing a ramp, which is at the moment their
method of access.
How do we guarantee that public access in perpetuity?
James Neal, who said James? Fingers are moving.
Well, maybe I'll start and James can dive in if he wants to. There's a lift being replaced on Silverdale Road, which will replace that lamp. But also at the moment there is no public access from this side of the site onto the canal towpath. But this scheme will create level access through from this part of Silverdale Road alongside the refurbished Shackles dock, and there are commercial units in here open to the public. So we are actually improving access in many ways, public access in many ways to the canal towpath.
I think the Head of Planning has a little bit more to add.
Yeah, I think the actual answer to the question may be that this would form part of the last of the head of terms, the improvements of canal towpath and canal side land. Obviously these are just heads of terms that were specified, and what would fall below that would ensure that there is public access through the site.
I'm grateful if that is picked up both in the minutes and in the work.
But we could add in brackets a clarification of that, so it's absolutely clear. That,
I think a clarification would be appropriate to make sure it is picked up, because I think that one of the critical things about this is access to the canal side working and improving and being maintained, and not at some point in the future disappearing again, because then the thing becomes less sustainable than it currently.
Thank you. And another, just a very minor point, in the section 106 we've gone from quite a specific construction training commitment to a very, very loose one, such that I don't know quite what it delivers. Why have we watered it down to that extent, please?
That could be wording, but I'll get the head of planning to confirm for me. The original version had the normal one we see, and this has got a slightly different one.
What we're actually finding in practice is it works better to have a flexible head of term, and that we can actually on some sites deliver a greater benefit and that if we tie ourselves down to particular financial contribution when the specifics of the scheme and when our economic development and partnerships manager comes into play. Appreciate it's a slightly convoluted answer, but in practice we're finding that this revised head of term works better than the more prescriptive one.
So in that case, would we be expecting that to be coming forward on future sites? And I haven't checked the Randall's application, which sits just below this, but I will do in a moment.
That is the Randall's one.
If asked the question, I would repeat the answer on the Randall's scheme.
Well, I hear where you're coming, and maybe in a different place we need to test that, because at the very least, when we specify it, we're setting down what is a minimum. It can always be exceeded through discussion, but actually this says anything is acceptable.
Okay, well, I think we may need to understand how that pans out. Sorry, I had Councillor Oswald, then Councillor Curling on my list, and then Councillor Yarra.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yeah, I made a note, access from canal, but that's more or less been answered, and I'm happy with that. Yeah, I'm quite pleased to see Shackles Dock being brought back into use through this application, and the CGIs that we've seen, it looks quite wonderful, really, and this will just enhance the canal, I think. And so I'm really quite pleased about that. I think it's a good scheme, and I thought that the site visit was more than helpful. I was aware of what was there, but not quite what it was like. It's deteriorated quite badly over the years, quite frankly, but I'm quite pleased to see this scheme come forward. Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Curtin?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm really echoing those comments. It's a really good scheme. It brings a much-needed piece of redevelopment, regeneration to a rundown piece of Hayes Town, and it brings the canal back into the Hayes Town Centre, back into a vibrant area of the town centre. So, all in all, a very good scheme. I would go so far as to say I would recommend officers' recommendations.
Okay, well, I'll hold that for 1 second. We'll be there in a minute. Councillor Yarrow.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, it was a very interesting site visit, and quite genuinely, if the CGIs do truly reflect what is going to be built, it will be quite a wonderful development, particularly the dock area and the landscaping that's going to be done with what is hopefully going to be some kind of restaurants and coffee houses or what have you. It's almost recreating Little Venice. I'm quite jealous of the people who are going to be living there. But no, I have no problem with it at all.
Good. I'll take one more on this because I think we're there. I don't think I'm getting any substantial questions. Well, I've got two more hands and then I'll move it because I think we are there. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I've just got one slight issue on this. I'm looking at building C on the first, from the first floor upwards. It looks like we've got some apartments that are at right angles to each other with possible overlooking issues. Could we, so the plans are pretty poor, so you can't see clearly exactly. Could the officers confirm that?
Yeah, I'll ask Neil to have a look for that. I couldn't see anything, but the plans are a little faint.
It doesn't show up particularly well, but across here, the layout has been designed so that only secondary windows, so anything that does have a window on this elevation is a secondary window, so it can be obscured, and we think should avoid any direct overlooking.
So I'm looking at part C, building C, which is the top.
Oh, sorry, building C. I beg your pardon. Yeah,
you've got that's it. That area there.
Yep. So just across from there to there. Yep.
No.
I'm sure they might. If they wrap around the corner, they might have avoided that.
Let's double check it before we. Well, they may be. The trouble is the plans we had in the plans pack were very difficult to read in terms of detail, which was a point has been raised. Councillor Duncan, do you want to raise another point while Neil's just checking that for me?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify the position about affordable housing. Presumably, under terms 4 and 5, it's going to be a minimum of 20 socially rented units, isn't it? And then, presumably, the affordable housing review mechanism might reveal another one or two, but it's certainly not going to reduce it, is it?
No.
So we're going to...
You're going to get that. The point of the affordable housing review mechanism is really to take account of if there's an uplift in property values which change the financial viability assessment and therefore mean more is affordable.
Yeah.
It dealt with that issue you used to have before, that somebody could sit on a site for a long time. Just about start it in line with planning, and then the things were worth an awful lot more at the end, and actually could well have generated some affordable.
So could I just ask the legal officer, that does say a minimum then, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Thank you.
That's good. Yep. Overlooking.
I was actually at a meeting where we went through this corner feature to try get it redesigned so that we ended up with recessed balconies and to sort out all the intervisibility issues. So there shouldn't be a problem. But if members are happy to delegate to me to do a final check, I'm pretty confident that there won't be an issue. The nearest balcony is definitely
they do look recessed if I'm looking
ones,
carefully.
unlike other ones on the scheme, because we dealt with that corner and there are bathrooms there as well. Yeah. So I think it's fine.
I think it probably looks all right. I don't think it would do any harm to have the head of planning have a final look, because we are looking at fairly...
and even if there is an issue, simple things like a little baffle on a balcony, there are very simple measures that can be used, as long as you're happy to delegate to me. Firstly, I don't think there is an issue because we went over it, but even if through a final audit there is one balcony out of sync, I can... that's something that can easily be
I think that's fair. We wouldn't want to see it again, and you can't do it here anyway because it's too detailed. Now, Councillor Curling has put a proposal on the table, accept officer's recommendation, which was varied only by the adding of an informative. Councillor Edwards, are you seconding for me? Thank you. All those in favour, please clearly show. Councillor Young, thank you very much. That one is unanimously passed. Thank you. I now move to the final item of the night, which is item 7. There is also a listed building report in here as well. For the Randall site, 7 to 9 Vine Street, Uxbridge. Neil.
Thank you, Chair. This site is located on the corner of Vine Street and Cricklefield Road. Falls in the secondary shopping area of Uxbridge Town Centre. It's not far from here, and I'm sure members are quite familiar with this. The site falls within the old Uxbridge Windsor Street Conservation Area, and the original 1938 Randalls building is a Grade 2 listed heritage asset and includes a largely intact shop front dating from that period. There are other buildings and structures that surround the rear yard. However, the only one considered to be of significance is the fire station building located on the rear of the site, fronting Cricklefield Road and dated from the early 20th century. This building is also considered to be listed and has a heritage value that should be preserved. That's the site plan. So this is the Randalls building. This is actually a 1960s edition, which is also listed. This is the old fire station building, which is deemed listed by merit of being within the curtilage of the main listed building, and these other less important buildings. Planning permission and listed building consent are sought for the redevelopment of the former Randalls department store for residential-led mixed-use development. The proposals involve change of use of the ground and part of the first floor of Randalls building from use class A1 to use class A3, with the flexible use within the use class A1-A3 for the island display unit. So there's some photos of the existing site. That's a view of the main historic 1930s frontage of Randalls that we all know. So this is the island unit, that's flexible A1, A3 use, and this will all be A3 use. That's a site plan, so this shows the retained and refurbished elements of Randalls and the fire station here and the new blocks here. There's some elevation, so that's the frontage with the main part of the 1930s Randalls refurbished, restored and extended. That's a view looking at the back of Randalls from inside the site, and you can see the larger buildings proposed to the rear of the site. And this is a view of the refurbished fire station building. and there's some visuals of, you see the vast majority of the fabric of the listed building is retained. That's a view from the other direction. That's a view from the corner of the new build on the corner. That's the refurbished fire station with the new build, and there's some floor plans. Conversion of the part of the first floor of Randall's building is for use class A1 and use class C3, so there will be residential in the upper floors of the Randalls. Addition of a second floor on Randall's building, so there's a recessed additional floor on top of Randall's, and you're seeing it there, so you can see how far back it is set from the edge of Randall's. So if I go back to the visualisation, you'll see that you're not really aware of the extra storey going on. There's also extensive restoration works, demolition of the 1960s western extension to Randall's building and replacement with the Part 3, Part 4 and Part 5 storey block. Conversion of the old fire station building to duplex apartments and the erection of 2 new residential blocks ranging from 2 to 6 stories in height to the rear of the site. And the provision of associated landscaping, disabled car parking and associated works. The scheme will provide a total of 58 residential units and 750 square metres of commercial floor space and will involve the demolition of the caretaker's flat and warehouse buildings at the rear. The proposed enhancements to the heritage significance delivered by the proposed development are considered to outweigh any harm to the listed building. Due regard has been made to the enhancements to the main facade of Randalls, both in terms of the listed building and the character and appearance of the conservation area. The identification of a viable optimum use to the Randalls building is considered to be a heritage benefit. Finally, given the acceptable design of Block 2 in height and in light of the relative poor quality of the 60s extension on the corner, the scheme is considered to generate an enhancement to the viability of the Uxbridge Town Centre and to the character appearance of the old Uxbridge Windsor Street conservation area. So the proposed scheme is recommended for approval subject to the conditions and 106 set out in the agreement and as amended in the addendum. Thank you.
Thank you. Who wants to start me on this one? I've got hands all over. I'll go Councillor Higgins, Councillor Duncan, Councillor Edwards.
We don't get many of them, but this is a lovely development, actually. Very nice, and I will, the only question I have really is that there is some absolutely wonderful mechanisms in this building, which I'm a bit of an anorak, so forgive me for it. It's the lamps and tubes, which are basically where the tills used to be. They used to put the money in and used to go up to the cashier, and the cashier used to check. I don't know what they can do, but it would be nice if somehow that, not preserved in actually the buildings, well, that'd be a bit ridiculous, but if it can be sort of, if someone could look in to see whether it can be donated to a museum or something like that. Apart from that, I would go with officer recommendation, so I'll put that out there already. And
James may have a commentary on that.
This may not be directly answering your question, but Charmaine Baker, our senior sort of conservation and planning specialist officer, has personally been very involved with this scheme and spent a lot of time on it, and she actually spent a lot of time on the planning conditions. There's 18 different conditions that follow through into the planning and listed building apps, and all of her conditions are here. So
does it include the one raised by the councillor? That was, I think, that was where I am. It did answer
the point that there is a condition concerning the cash till. That it's condition 9. It's on the bottom page 191. So effectively, I know as a fact that Charmaine has been, many times in the building and has picked up all the different points of value.
Yeah. We knew that before you asked the question.
I don't usually ask questions if there's usually the answer there, but sometimes I get it wrong. But if someone could actually just look at that for me, it is just. I believe then there's not many of them left in the country, so it is something that is quite rare to see. So, and if you watch Paddington Bear, I think it was in that film as well that we're using them. But when he went to the geography,
I was the head of planning suggested to me, and I think it's sensible if we will delegate to him at the end of this, if we might, to get the conservation officer to investigate the applicant if something can be done to store that or museum it or whatever if it doesn't work in the building.
And I so move the recommendations.
Okay, but I've got at least three other speakers now. Councillor Duncan I had first, and then I've got...
Thank you, Chair. I do think it's a good scheme. I'm sad that they had to put a second storey. I know it's set back and you're not going to see much of it, but it does, it does affect the integrity of that original building, which is what it's all about. I wish they'd just put a few more on or put another floor on or something somewhere else. But anyway, it's there and it's set back, so fine. What I wanted to know about was the affordable housing, because it says that...
Can I stop you before you ask the question? I know it's not in there. Is that what you were going to ask?
Yes.
Yeah. One has not been finally sorted. There will be affordable. It's not been finally sorted, and the officers were meant to ask. And my apologies for forgetting that we were going to. James was going to ask for delegation to myself and the Labour lead to be advised of that percentage and agree it outside if that was acceptable to the committee.
Yeah. Thank you. Could I just say that this the financial viability done came up with a level at 0%. So I think everybody's going to have their work cut out on this, and I do.
I don't believe it is 0%.
Well, it was in the report. It was originally set, but the third-party appraiser disagreed with this assessment.
Yeah. So our appraiser hasn't agreed.
So it hasn't been agreed. So it's all work to be done, presumably, but hopefully it's going to be more than one.
Yeah, so that is to be agreed, and that should have been up front in the officer presentation, because we do need to ask for that, because you were quite right to say it's not in the report. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. I also think it's a very good scheme, and will be supporting it. A couple of matters of detail just to clarify. The new retail unit to be built on the demolished building extension, it's described in here as being for A1 class.
One bit's A1, A3, one's A1, isn't it?
Yeah, and I wondered the extent to which a solitary retail unit down that end of that road is going to be viable. Could it be made more viable if it was A1, A3?
Well, is there a reason why that is A1? Because it is rather isolated. I know that I come out of that corner every day, and it is a very isolated little corner for a retail unit, unless we've got a specialist retailer that fancies it. It would be very specialist as well.
I mean, it's quite a small floor area, so I can't see that any negative issues would rise from a more flexible use of the building.
Well, that would please some, I'm sure, that I can't comment who those might be. Councillor Higgins, behave. Perhaps, I mean, I don't remember an objection if we relax that to A1, A3. I think it may be more flexible, because there are no other shops round that corner, and in fact there's no retail down that road from my memory of it when I walked up there this morning. Councillor Oswald? Yeah?
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Oh, we'll have one go and then...
Thank you very much, John.
No, you haven't.
Condition 18, I just wonder, the air quality condition, the need for the bit under vehicular traffic on a car-free development, it just seems particularly onerous. And also I'd like some understanding of what condition 19, non-road mobile...
It's one of those ones that does appear when you get 18, if I can tell you that.
Yeah, I just wonder why that's there and
I thought
what it
we
means.
were re-looking at 18, given that this is a car-free development, and there'll be some servicing to the shops, but they're going to have limited control over what happens in one service bay. Right, officers are debating that one.
Final observation, if I may,
yeah.
And that's just one of general principle, and that is the conditions, as worded at the moment, all require everything to be agreed before commencement of the development. Some of these are very minor and could be agreed at a later process to enable the building works to get going. The fewer obstacles we put in the way of speedy development, the better, in my view. And we should be very careful in requiring conditions prior to the commencement of development.
I think that's one for planners to note. An observation? No, well made, councillor, well made. Sorry, councillor Oswald.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. Yeah, I mean, another really nice scheme that's come before us tonight. Aren't we lucky? Because we have had some bum deals here, haven't we? This
was a special night, so you get special schemes.
This is a good scheme, I think, and I'm really quite pleased with it. And I'm really pleased that the fire station, it's been retained in principle anyway. I think that's really, really good, because that's part of Uxbridge's history. And I think it's a shame that we've lost places like Harmon's Brewery and places like that. But this is going to stay in situ, and I think it's a cracking scheme. And if someone had moved it, I'm quite happy to second it. Thank you, Chairman.
Can I come back on the air?
Yeah, please.
So,
only outstanding I've got now.
If we were talking about a travel plan, you can have the full TfL compliant travel plan with a £20,000 bond, or there's a slightly more watered down version where we say we just want a travel statement. I do take on board the comment that members are making that this appears to be the latter rather than the former rather than the latter. And if I were given delegated authority to look again at conditions 18 and 19, I wouldn't want to remove entirely in an air quality management area air quality conditions, but I think if I were to go through it in detail with the air quality officer, we could then look at is there anything there that's too onerous given the scale of the scheme?
Yeah, I think that's fine. Yeah, we are moved, we are seconded. The only thing to come back is the affordable housing's got to be agreed outside. And that was it, wasn't it? And the head of planning is going to review 18 and 19 and see if there's any amendments. And we're going A1, A3 on the unit, not A1 as proposed. All those in favour, please clearly show. Unanimously approved. Thank you very much indeed. 7 o'clock. Thank you for your time. Oh, sorry, I forgot the listed building, didn't I? Thank you for reminding me. Can I have a proposed and seconded for the listed building? Proposed, seconded. All those in favour, please clearly show. Thank you very much. Job done.